An I-Team investigation 3 years in the making.
Oh, it is wrong. I think it's wrong.
The law saying how the VA would pay emergency bills was changed in the name of that outraged veteran. But a lingering loophole our I-Team has uncovered means all veterans could still be on the line to fully pay for their own emergency care. That Korean War veteran has a warning for every U.S. veteran. He gave his first ever interview to the newest member of our I-Team. This is Matthew Simon. Welcome, Matthew. And you broke this national story, which impacts people here.
Right, you think about all the folks who are veterans, 95,000 of them living right here in the Miami Valley, and any one of these veterans could be Richard Staub, the Korean War veteran for nearly 1 decade. He's been fighting to have the VA pay him back thousands in outstanding emergency bills, and as it turns out, the VA's own rule to pay for non-VA emergency care is named after Staub. But a loophole in the Staub rule could leave any veteran vulnerable to massive medical debt if it's not fixed.
I was in basic training. That's when they took that picture, I believe.
Okay, here's another one, Dick.
Looking back at some of his basic training memories with his friend Jackie.
Oh, that's the group of guys.
Also brings back remembering the promise 86-year-old Korean War Air Force veteran Richard Staub says his country made to him.
You enlist with us, you get all health care taken care of, and this and that. That was the big thing back then.
But when he survived emergency open-heart surgery at a non-VA hospital after suffering a heart attack and stroke in 2010, the retired Sergeant Airman First Class could not quite put into words.
Not too hard?
Yeah, I know.
How he feels that promise was broken.
Let's face it, you don't like to talk about sadness. You'd rather talk about things that are cheerful.
The VA saying after he survived, the way they interpreted the law because he had other insurance, that Medicare had covered part of his non-VA emergency care, they would not reimburse him for any of the remaining $48,000 in bills.
Oh, it is wrong. I think it's wrong.
These are Dick's files, and they're largely comprised of medical records here, appeals, pleadings here.
And also a big whiteboard inside the office of Staub's St. Cloud, Minnesota lawyer Jackie Shue, who's also a veteran, shows the journey of VA denials representing Richard Staub's case for most of the last 8 years.
So it's got to be fixed. I mean, it's sad to say that what has been promised to Dick and all other veterans who have that vested benefit is not what they're receiving.
During the course of our 3-year investigation, a House Veterans Affairs Committee spokesperson confirmed 1 year ago more than 1 million Staub-related veterans claims were waiting to be processed. That included the VA confirming 217,000 veterans nationally waiting for an answer. Refunds the VA estimated would mean having to add hundreds of millions of dollars to their budget. But now the VA says with the Staub rule published and all claims processed, they cannot tell us who's been refunded. They cannot even tell us if any veterans have died waiting for their refund. And with the publication of the Staub rule came an unforeseen obstacle.
The problem with the new regulation is the VA came up with a different reason for why they shouldn't reimburse veterans who have some private insurance.
Bart Stitchman is the executive director of the National Veterans Legal Services Program. He previously was part of the team representing Staub nationally and is now fighting the VA's emergency care denials with the class action lawsuit. While Staub's court victory specified the VA has to pay the rest of a non-VA emergency bill, even if a veteran has other insurance, they say that's not happening, and the VA is rejecting claims anyway. Also saying the VA added the words deductible and co-insurance to the part of the Staub rule, allowing the VA not to pay for co-payments.
And the VA is trying to drive a Mack truck through that minor exception so that everything that you could possibly reimburse a veteran for is not subject to reimbursement.
Should you cry for all the other servicemen that haven't got theirs just?
Even after Richard Staub had a law named after him.
It's just not me. It's all the other ones.
He still does not have his refund. And based on his case, he and his lawyer do not think any other veteran does either.
This impacts every military member currently serving, past, currently serving, and future until it's fixed.
Shu says just look no further than Staub surviving another stroke in 2017. The VA is now using his own law, the Staub rule, to cite cost shares or deductibles associated with his other health insurance to reject payment for his non-VA emergency care.
But I just can't believe in my heart that that would have been Congress's intent.
So Richard Staub, this one Minnesota veteran, chooses to continue fighting this epic battle.
Life is a battle, isn't it?
Hoping someday he and the hundreds of thousands of veterans he represents will finally see justice.
And you got to have hope that things will work out. You made the right decisions. And let's face it, not everything goes that smooth.
Now, numerous public records requests to the VA from our I-Team have gone unanswered. A congressional aide tells the I-Team only one single $12 reimbursement has ever been made under the Staub rule. And Cheryl, the MDLSP, that's this national group here, telling me that my own reporting is referenced in this class action lawsuit. Those oral arguments will start next week.
And even now, Matthew, we continue learning new details about the Staub case.
Right. Richard Staub's case continues. There's a lot of back and forth. The Board of Veterans Appeals is insisting most of Staub's rehab bills because he chose to be at a private non-VA facility. His lawyer tells the I-Team after having a heart attack and stroke, he simply could not communicate. So as I said, the back and forth continues. And there's two important notes here. Under federal law, if a veteran dies, their benefit dies with them. And remember, in the big picture, the VA's testified through the years by their own admission, settling Staub could mean billions added to their budget.
It's very sad, but excellent reporting. Thank you, Matthew Simon. Our digital extra is live online and in our app now. It breaks down how the Staub rule is supposed to work. If you know a veteran impacted by the Staub rule, Matthew Simon and the I-Team wants to hear from you. You can call our tip line at 937-259-2143 or email us on the I-Team page of WHIO.com. Continuing coverage now of an ongoing I-Team investigation into the VA not paying emergency room bills of hundreds of thousands of veterans if they received care at a non-VA hospital.
Now, recent federal ruling against the VA now means those veterans, including some here in Ohio, could be owed as much as $6.5 billion.
The I-Team's Matthew Simon broke this story nationally more than 3 years ago. He continues his coverage this evening. Matthew?
Cheryl James, the I-Team's been working to find out how all of these veterans will get their refunds, if ever, and where those billions will come from.
Coinsurance is exactly like deductibles and copayments.
No, copayment or similar payment.
An argument over that one word so many of us know.
Everybody knows when you go into a hospital's emergency room situation, those tend to be rather modest amounts, $20, $200.
3 years ago, this same panel of U.S. Court of Veterans Appeals judges ordered the VA to follow the law and pay emergency care bills for veterans who had other insurance and went to non-VA hospitals. But the VA never started paying.
3 years, nothing's happened.
Hundreds of thousands who served their country were left with big emergency room bills to pay out of their own pockets.
This is also against the backdrop of Mr. Staub.
I was in basic training. That's when they took that picture, I believe.
Okay, here's another one, Dick.
86-year-old Minnesota Korean War veteran Richard Staub is one of them, left to pay bills totaling almost $48,000 for heart attack and stroke care he received at a non-VA hospital. The I-Team first met him back in February.
You enlist with us, you get all health care taken care of, and this and that. That was the big thing back then.
He sued when the VA would not reimburse him because he had other health insurance, in his case Medicare. His lawsuit was based on a 2010 law that required the VA to pay, but still they did not. His lawsuit led to a new rule named after him, the Staub rule, requiring the VA to pay again.
Yeah, I know.
but still to this day, he has not seen a dime come back to him.
Let's face it, you don't like to talk about sadness. You'd rather talk about things that are cheerful.
When the I-Team reported this story in May, congressional sources told us Staub was not alone.
A congressional aide tells the I-Team only one single $12 reimbursement has ever been made under the Staub rule.
How much has been paid to anybody since 2016?
To answer that question, our reporting was brought up during this May hearing.
But we did attach to our reply brief, and this is all we really have to go on, a newspaper article reporting that there's been a single payment of $12 since the time that the regulations went into.
When the government tried to argue that was not true.
What we do know is that we have paid almost $2,500 as part of Mr. Staub's emergency care.
Judge William S. Greenberg fired back.
But why should we believe what you're saying?
VA lawyer Christopher Bader later said the government had no evidence any veteran had been paid more than the one $12 payment under the Staub rule.
You don't have a record before you, and so the record is fact poor. I'll admit that.
Which brings us back to those copayment questions.
That's why we're struggling here.
As the Staub rule began being implemented last year, the VA secretary added language, making it so the VA would treat any remaining bills similarly to cheaper copayments, including much more expensive coinsurance.
Congress didn't put that in. You people put it in.
Effectively, that language still made veterans responsible for their non-VA emergency bills, just as before the Staub rule. But on September the 9th, responding to a new class action lawsuit, a judge ordered that language be thrown out and requiring reimbursement as Congress intended. Calling the VA position inherently absurd, Judge Greenberg wrote, "Deductibles and coinsurance are not similar to a copayment." Under federal law, if a veteran dies, their benefit dies with them. In an affidavit swearing he had not been paid as the government claimed, Staub wrote, "I will be 87 years old on November 19th, and it is my hope that reimbursement will be paid before I die."
And you got to have hope that things will work out. You made the right decisions. And let's face it, not everything goes that smooth.
And that is really the sad thing in the years of my reporting. Veterans telling me because of these billing horror stories, they are more afraid of going to the closest non-VA emergency room than they are of the chances they might die and leave their loved ones with those horrible bills. Now, the judges have never said in their orders when the VA has to pay back these hundreds of thousands of veterans as much as $6 billion. In fact, the executive director of the group behind the class action lawsuit tells me they're now considering all options to deal with that question. We still do not know how many veterans here in Ohio are impacted because the VA's ignored our records request. For the I-Team, Matthew Simon, News Center 7.
And you can watch Matthew's original I-Team investigation detailing Richard Staub's decade-long legal struggle. You will find it on our WHIO streaming app. That's a free download on your Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV devices.